In the heart of Umuoma, a village nestled between endless fields and swaying palm trees, stood a mansion that glowed like royalty under the sun. It belonged to Amara, a woman so radiant and confident that villagers called her Queen Without a Crown. Her beauty was legendary, flawless skin, full lips, and eyes that could freeze a room. But what truly set Amara apart was her taste for wealth. She was married to Obi, a brilliant businessman known for turning cotton into gold. His name carried power, his riches carried respect. Yet while Obi built his fortune with sweat and strategy, Amara spent like a woman who believed the sky would never fall. Her life was silk and sapphires, scented oils and servants. She never touched cooking pots, never walked barefoot, never repeated a dress. Her presence was so grand that even noble wives lowered their gaze in her presence. And to Amara, this life wasn't just deserved, it was her birthright. She didn't marry into wealth, she believed she was wealth. Obi admired her beauty but feared her hunger for attention. He watched the numbers dip while her spending rose. "Amara, we must learn to breathe within our means," he once said as she ordered gold-plated spoons she'd never use. She only laughed, tossing her head back, as if money grew on baobab trees. "What's the use of wealth if you live like the poor?" she replied, twirling her new earrings. Obi swallowed his warnings. After all, what man doesn't want his wife to shine? Even the way Amara held herself told the world she had never known struggle. Her footsteps were light, her perfume thick and deliberate, her words always dipped in honey and pride. She threw parties for no reason, gifted rappers to women she barely knew, and hosted village beauty contests that she secretly rigged. Her name became a storm, feared, envied, worshipped. Obi, meanwhile, silently calculated his losses, praying the rain would keep falling on his fields and not on his finances. But even the sunniest days have clouds waiting to gather. Neighbors began whispering about Obi's long absences and unpaid debts. Market women gossiped that Amara was spending faster than the gods could provide. The elders, who once praised Obi, now shook their heads in silence. And Amara, she danced through it all, unaware that thunder was rumbling beneath her feet. The marketplace of Umuoma transformed when Amara walked through it. Her silk wrapper trailed behind like a river of gold, her perfume chasing the wind. Children stopped playing, traders paused mid-bargain. Even the town crier sometimes lost his voice in her presence. She never bargained, never carried a thing herself. Servants trailed her with baskets, and she paid for luxury with the wave of her hand. Yet no one could tell her that her kingdom stood on a foundation of sand. One afternoon, a poor woman argued with a trader over the price of beans. Amara rolled her eyes. "Why waste breath over food fit for dogs?" she said to her friends, loud enough for the poor woman to hear. Her laughter rang out like thunder. Across the market, Neka, Amara's childhood friend, stood still, heart burning. She had grown up alongside Amara, once sharing boiled maize under the mango trees. But success had separated them, and now the friend she once loved spoke like a queen mocking her subjects. "Some people were born to eat crumbs," Amara continued, adjusting her bangles. "Me? I was born to eat gold." The women around her erupted in laughter. Neka turned away, her stomach twisting. The memory of Amara borrowing wrappers from her mother flashed in her mind. Was this the same girl who once cried when they couldn't afford soap? "Neka, are you all right?" a vendor asked gently. She nodded, her jaw tight. "One day," she murmured to herself, "one day the wind will turn." And from that day forward, Neka stopped looking at Amara with admiration. She started watching her with calculation. The mockery grew worse. Amara once threw a coin at a beggar's feet and said, "Buy yourself a smile." The crowd laughed, but Neka's fists clenched. She no longer saw Amara as a friend, but as a storm that needed to be silenced. While Amara bought imported lace and perfume, Neka invested in ideas, learning from merchants, saving each coin with quiet purpose. Neka began to distance herself. She no longer greeted Amara with warmth, but with cold civility. "Good day," she would say, her eyes flat, her smile tight. Amara, too self-absorbed to notice the shift, simply assumed Neka was jealous. She never realized that her biggest rival had once been her truest friend. Obi watched Amara throw another lavish party, the third that month. Musicians played, dancers swayed, and wine flowed like a stream in rainy season. Gold-plated dishes overflowed with roasted meats and spicy stews. Even the servants looked stunned by the excess. Amara glowed under the moonlight, dancing barefoot on imported rugs. Obi stood at the edge, watching, worried. He no longer recognized the girl he married, humble, charming, and full of laughter. Now her laughter was hollow, soaked in pride. After the guests left, Obi approached her. "Amara, we are burning money like firewood. My profits are falling. If we don't slow down—" She cut him off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Obi, must you spoil every moment with your fear? You make money. I spend it. That is balance." Mama Obi, who had remained silent throughout the night, finally spoke from the shadows. "You spend like someone whose hands will never grow old. One day, your fingers will tremble and you will wish you had saved for firewood and yam." Amara gave a sarcastic bow. "Mama, you may live on leftovers if you wish, but I was born to feast." She turned and walked away, her laughter ringing through the courtyard, unaware that destiny had begun to shift under her feet. Obi stood still for a long time, the night air heavy on his shoulders. The music had stopped, but the echo of Amara's words stayed. He looked at the feast's remains, half-eaten goat meat, spilled wine, broken plates. It wasn't just food that was being wasted, it was everything they had worked for. And deep inside, he feared the gods were already preparing their lesson. That night, he didn't sleep. He paced the compound until the moon disappeared. He stared at their empty storerooms, at the idle carts once used for deliveries. He thought of the drought whispers coming from nearby towns. The clouds were no longer generous. And Amara. She was dreaming of her next party, unaware that the sky above them had already begun to crack. The first sign came in the form of silence. Orders stopped arriving. Merchants who once praised Obi began to look elsewhere. The cotton fields, once rich and full, turned pale under the scorching sun. A harsh drought swept through the region, killing not only crops, but hope. Obi tried to stay strong, borrowing money, negotiating with buyers, but nothing worked. His empire was crumbling, and his queen still lived like the walls weren't shaking. One evening he burst into their bedroom, his face pale with fear. Amara sat on the bed, admiring a new necklace she had secretly purchased on credit. "We are finished," Obi said. "The last farm contract has failed. The banks have frozen our accounts. Creditors are on their way." She blinked at him, confused. "Obi, what are you saying?" "I'm saying," he said, his voice breaking, "that by tomorrow we may not have a roof over our heads." The necklace slipped from her fingers. It hit the ground and shattered. She stared at the broken pieces like a child seeing death for the first time. "You let this happen," she whispered. "I begged you to stop spending," Obi replied, almost choking. "You laughed, you mocked, and now look where we are." Thunder rumbled outside, as if the gods themselves had decided to speak. That night, the walls of their mansion no longer felt like home. They felt like a tomb, and by morning it would be emptied. By sunrise, their mansion was no longer theirs. Men in dull uniforms arrived with ledgers and cold eyes, slapping legal notices on the gates like final nails in a coffin. Obi and Amara stood outside with nothing but 2 bags and the clothes they wore. Amara's silks now wrinkled, her feet bare for the first time in years. The street they once ruled with pride now watched them like predators circling wounded prey. Children whispered, women gossiped, some men scoffed. "Is that not Amara?" they said, barely hiding their smirks. "The one who mocked others for being poor?" Amara couldn't lift her head. Each step she took was heavier than the last, as though her shame had weight. Beside her, Obi remained silent. His shoulders slumped, not from pride but exhaustion. His kingdom had fallen, and the queen was no longer untouchable. They knocked on doors, hoping for mercy. One after another, old friends turned them away. "Ah, Obi, times are hard," one said, not meeting his eyes. "We have no space," said another, firmly shutting the door. Amara clutched Obi's arm tighter each time, her breath shaky. The villagers they once fed with leftovers now watched them starve with folded arms. As the sun dipped, painting the sky with pity, they found themselves standing before a compound more grand than even their old home. Neka's home. Her walls were tall, her windows lined with lace, and at the gate servants dressed better than Amara now did. Obi hesitated. Amara looked at him, her pride already shattered. "We have nowhere else," she whispered. And with trembling hands she knocked. The gates creaked open, and the couple was greeted by the glint of gold tiles and polished lanterns that lined the path. Neka stood at the entrance like a goddess carved from power itself. She wore a wine-colored wrapper embroidered with fine thread, her arms layered in bangles, her neck heavy with coral beads. Her hair was tied high in a regal bun, and she held a goblet like a queen at a banquet. She didn't smile, she didn't blink. "Well, well," Neka said, her voice as smooth and sharp as a knife dipped in honey. "Is this not the same Amara who once said she was born to eat gold?" Amara tried to speak, but her lips quivered. "Neka, please, we have nothing left. We need help." Her voice was barely a whisper, more breath than sound. Neka stepped closer, circling them slowly, like a lioness sizing up her prey. "I remember when you laughed at me for wearing borrowed wrappers. When you tossed coins at beggars like bones to stray dogs. Now look at you." She gestured to Amara's frayed wrapper. "You wear your pride like rags." Obi took a step forward. "Please, Neka, we just need a roof, a chance to rebuild." Neka tilted her head. "I should turn you away like the others, but unlike you, I remember where I came from." She snapped her fingers. 2 servants appeared. "Give them a place in the servant quarters," she said coolly. Then, without turning back, she added, "Amara can start by scrubbing my floors. Let her learn what it feels like to clean up after people who think they're better than her." Amara's knees buckled, but Obi caught her. The servants nodded and led them toward the back. Past the flowers, past the laughter, past everything that had once been theirs. As they walked, Amara felt the weight of Neka's gaze digging into her back. Behind her, Neka sipped from her goblet, a smile finally curling at the corners of her mouth. "Let's see how royalty handles dirt," she murmured. The servant quarters smelled of sweat, soap, and smoke. The walls were cracked, the windows had no curtains, and the mattress they were given was nothing more than a sack stuffed with straw. At dawn, Amara was woken not by the scent of hibiscus water or the gentle hum of music, but by a servant banging a wooden spoon against a pot. "Up, you're not royalty here." Amara's first task was to scrub the courtyard, barefoot, with a broken broom and a rusted bucket. Her knees ached, her palms blistered, and the sun mocked her from above. As she bent down to scoop water, her reflection stared back from the bucket. Sunken eyes, cracked lips, and dirt-streaked cheeks. She hardly recognized the woman staring back at her. Neka made sure to pass by during the hardest hours of the day, her sandals clacking loudly, her perfume overwhelming the scent of sweat. "Amara," she'd call out sweetly, "you missed a spot." Again. Then she'd laugh and sip from a chilled goblet, as if watching a comedy. The other servants quickly learned to follow Neka's lead, giving Amara the worst chores, mocking her behind her back, treating her like a fallen idol. Meals were meager, thin porridge in a tin bowl, sometimes accompanied by stale bread. Amara, who once dined on fried goat meat and imported wine, now prayed silently for salt. At night she cried quietly, careful not to wake Obi, but he knew, he always knew. And yet, each morning, she got up. She swept, she washed, she endured. The same hands that once held gold now bore calluses. The same voice that once gave commands now whispered prayers for strength. Through the pain, something unspoken began to grow in Amara, something deeper than pride, tougher than wealth. It was a humid evening when Obi stumbled upon a conversation that would ignite the fire of truth. He was fetching water from the back well, careful not to disturb the others, when he heard hushed voices drifting from the veranda. Hidden behind a stack of empty jerry cans, he recognized the tones instantly. One was Chief Okoye, the other belonged to Neka. "She trusted me," Neka said, her voice thick with smugness. "She laughed at me for years, and now she serves at my feet. Do you know the sweetest part? I made it happen." Chief Okoye chuckled. "You're colder than I thought. I redirected Obi's shipments, bribed 2 of his main buyers to abandon him, and blocked his access to new cotton routes," she confessed, as if listing chores. "They think their downfall was natural. It wasn't. I orchestrated it." Obi's hands trembled around the bucket's handle. His mind reeled, his chest tightened. The betrayal ran deeper than debt. It was rooted in revenge, planted by someone they once called family. His heart pounded in his ears, louder than the frogs chirping in the distance. That night, he returned to the servant quarters like a man haunted. Amara was rinsing clothes in a basin when she looked up. "Obi? What happened?" He knelt beside her, voice shaking. "It was her, Neka. She destroyed us on purpose." Amara's hands stopped moving. For a moment, everything went silent between them. The water, the wind, even their grief. Then a tear slipped down her cheek, not from sadness, but from the sharp, bitter sting of betrayal. "We trusted her," she whispered. "We begged her." "And she made us grovel for her entertainment," Obi added. His jaw clenched. "She needs to be exposed." Amara nodded slowly. She didn't speak again that night, but in the stillness, something inside her hardened. Neka had broken her, but not completely. What remained now was forged not in gold, but in fire. The wind shifted in Umuoma. At first it came as a whisper, rumors in the market of missing funds, of Neka's trader in Lagos disappearing with a fortune. Then whispers became shouts. Chief Okoye was arrested for fraud, and his assets were seized. When the villagers learned that Neka had been in business with him, their admiration turned to suspicion. The lavish life she built began to crack, one marble tile at a time. Servants left in the night, buyers pulled out of deals. Her accountant vanished without a trace, taking with him all her savings. Neka screamed through the compound like a madwoman, slapping maids, threatening guards, demanding someone fix it. But no one moved. The same power she once wore like perfume now stank like rot. One afternoon, men from the bank arrived. They nailed a red notice on her gate. Property claimed. Neka watched barefoot, robe tattered, mascara streaked from tears. Her compound, once the talk of Umuoma, now stood silent and empty like a cursed palace. The same villagers who once bowed to her now whispered behind her back. At the back of the crowd, Amara stood still, her eyes calm, her face unreadable. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply watched as the woman who took everything from her now had nothing. And when Neka's eyes met hers across the dust and shame, Amara didn't blink. She only turned, took Obi's hand, and walked away. Karma didn't knock. It kicked the door in, and this time it wore Amara's face. The house was nothing like the mansion they once lived in. It was a modest clay structure with a rusted zinc roof, 2 windows without glass, and a door that creaked every time the wind breathed. Yet to Amara and Obi, it was a palace of peace. It stood on a quiet edge of Umuoma, close to the stream, far from gossip and grandeur. It was theirs, earned, not inherited. Each morning, Amara rose with the sun. She tied her wrapper tightly, secured her headscarf, and stepped out to sweep the compound. The scent of fresh earth filled her lungs, and for once, it didn't remind her of loss. It reminded her she was alive. Obi tended to their small garden, where tomatoes, okra, and ugu leaves now grew. Together they built a life from the ashes with bare hands and borrowed hope. They started a fabric stall at the market. Amara, once known for extravagance, now sold beautiful handmade wrappers she dyed and stitched herself. Her fingers, once adorned with gold, now bore the colors of her labor, red from dye, brown from sun, and proud with calluses. Customers came not because of her name, but because of the quality of her work. She had earned their respect, thread by thread. In the evenings, Amara and Obi sat outside beneath the mango tree, sipping pap and laughing quietly. They no longer needed loud parties or silk robes. Peace had become their new luxury. Amara looked at the stars not with longing, but with gratitude. "This," she whispered one night, "is the kind of wealth that doesn't fade." When people passed by their home, they saw not a fallen couple, but two people who had risen again. With scars, yes, but also with strength. Even the village elders nodded in approval, and though Amara no longer wore gold, she wore something far rarer: humility. One day, a girl in the market asked her, "Auntie Amara, were you really once the richest woman in Umuoma?" Amara smiled gently. "Yes," she said, "but now I am the happiest." And in that simple home, surrounded by crops, laughter, and love, Amara finally understood the kind of crown that could never be taken away. I hope this story reminds you that life has a way of teaching us lessons, whether we're ready or not. Amara thought beauty and money would protect her forever. She lived like the world owed her everything. But when the storm came, even her golden wrappers couldn't keep her dry. And Neka. She let bitterness guide her. She didn't just want to rise, she wanted to see others fall. But what you build with revenge doesn't last. It crumbles, just like everything else built on hate. In the end, it wasn't about who had the biggest house or the finest clothes. It was about who could stand when everything else fell apart. That's real strength. That's real wealth. So before you laugh at someone's struggle, before you chase pride or pay back hurt with hurt, remember this: tables turn, seasons change. And life always comes full circle.